Welcome to the Verdin Verdict Sports Show. Welcome to the stream. It's been a while since we've gone live and done our predictions, done our breakdowns, and talked about some college football here on YouTube. We're going to let some people pile in before we dive into the real meat of it here, but we're going to kind of dive back towards LSU versus Mississippi State and what we saw in that game. Great game. I think that you can't really complain as an LSU Tigers fan about that performance. It's a big win. Hung a lot of points in there. Wasn't really competitive the entire game. Yeah, it might be a snooze fest to some fans, but when your team's putting on the pounding, you're not going to want to see anything other than that, other than the touchdowns, the Jaden Daniels insanely accurate performance. Let's break into that. 30 for 34. That's an SEC, or excuse me, not SEC, but LSU school record. Nobody else that has played quarterback for the LSU Tigers has ever went 30 for 34. Not to mention, think about what he's done in addition to that in that game. 361 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. Got a couple of them on the ground as well with his legs. And all in all, I think that LSU's offense is really, really efficient. It's kind of heading in the right direction. Things are shaping up for, Brian Kelly and Mike Denbrock, and it looked a little rough against Florida State. It kind of made people worry. What are we going to do with all these running backs that we have? How are we going to get our quarterback to throw the ball down the field to our talented wide receiver room? How are we going to get the offensive line to gel and protect him and not have Jaden running out in a frenzy? But all in all, I think that they were able to answer those questions. They were able to, kind of figure some things out, help the people in their new roles get established and, start to develop that consistency that's needed in college football. 10 of 18 third downs converted last Saturday for the Tigers. That shows you exactly what you need. That shows you everything you need to know about the direction LSU's offense is heading in. They're going out, they're executing, they're doing the right things. They're doing the little things, as Brian Kelly would say. That's probably one of the more important messages that Coach Kelly preaches to his team on a day in and day out basis. They tuned out the noise. That's another thing. First SEC game for the Tigers. A lot of people were interested to see how they would handle it, especially losing to Florida State, especially coming off of a big year. You go to the SEC title game, you represent your side of that conference, and you do it well, I say. You move on to the bowl game, phenomenal performance, score 70-plus points, wipeout win. Do that again in week 2 over here. And after this week 3 game, it things like they're getting things rolling. I think that all in all, though, my number one takeaway from this game is just please, Jaden Daniels, start getting down a little sooner. Let's not get you banged up. I want you to stay healthy. I don't want the potential Heisman quarterback. That's right, Heisman. Potential Heisman out here getting hurt. I know that word getting paired with Jaden Daniels, it ruffles a couple people's feathers. I get it. Jaden Daniels might not be the quarterback that y'all are used to at LSU, the quarterback that, we might pick if we had our pick at everyone in college football. You got Caleb Williams, you got Michael Penix Jr., you got a lot of great talent that a lot of people have their eyes on. But, let's look at what we got here at Jaden Daniels at LSU. I feel like someone who's second in passing yards in the SEC, second in passing touchdowns in the SEC, third in SEC completion rate. Pretty impressive. Now let's look at a national level. Passing yards, he's 7th in the country with more passing yards than Caleb Williams. This is an interesting note. He's tied with Jordan Travis, Quinn Ewers, and Bo Nix at 14th in the nation for passing touchdowns. And looking at his completion rate, he's tied at around 13th in the nation, but he's got a higher completion rate than Drake May, Sam Hartman, KJ Jefferson this Saturday, and Duke's Riley Leonard. Now, I mention these guys because I think that these quarterbacks are among the elite in college football. I think it's pretty safe that we can all agree that these guys are some of the best passers, some of the best guys behind that role, behind center, trying to go and throw footballs down the field. If Jaden Daniels is par for par with them on these statistics, major statistics, not only in this conference, but in the entirety of college football, I think it's time to start giving him some credit where credit's due. I'm not saying that Jaden gets no credit. Of course he gets credit. However, it's just kind of hard for me to think like that any other quarterback putting up these stats at any other school wouldn't get that type of Heisman attention. I'm not saying he's running away with the award, and I'm not saying he's a lock, and a lot of things can change. We want to see him against Arkansas with that defensive pressure that we'll get into a little bit later in this stream. We want to see him against Alabama at home. We want to see him in these tough moments, these Heisman moments. However, looking at him last year in those moments during pressure, he kind of handled them pretty well. Yeah, you got the Tennessee game, and yeah, you got the Georgia game. But everybody has some, growing pains, so to speak. He's got a lot of experience at that starting role. And I think that, we've got a pretty good guy under center that we can have confidence in. Another thing, too, is that he adds a lot of wrinkles to the game because, he can run around and whatnot, but that provides such a big boost in terms of confusing the defense, making the defense stay on their toes, having them uncomfortable and not feeling like, they have that LSU offense on wraps. When you can create in many ways, it's better than being able to create in no ways. If we had no running game, we couldn't move the ball, everyone knew we were trying to throw, things would get old pretty quickly. But the fact that our quarterback can bounce out, we got a handful of running backs that can pound the ball down the field, and then we got an insane wide receiver room stacked with guys like Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Kyron Lacey, Chris Hilton, and even a Mason Taylor when he gets back and healthy. These guys are primed for success. I think Malik Neighbors proved himself as one of the SEC's best wide receivers last week, 13 receptions, 239 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. I think that, when we get to utilize these guys in space, it's not necessarily, because of Jaden Daniels being able to run, but him being able to be mobile and him being able to confuse guys and make guys nervous on that other side of the ball, that adds a whole element to it. I think, after this week, I am going to label LSU the SEC West leader. Yeah, we got a lot of time left, a couple weeks into the year, but from what we've seen with teams like Alabama, teams like Mississippi State, A&M, and then, what we'll see this Saturday with Arkansas, it seems like that race is kind of shaping out. It's beautiful, too, because we get to see Alabama play Ole Miss. We kind of get to really see what the future of this conference is looking like towards the end of next year or, this year, what we're going to be seeing, how things are going to be shaping up towards the playoffs. I think that if LSU can somehow make it to Atlanta, that playoff possibility, it starts to become real again. We open up the year number 5 in the country. Everyone's wondering, man, can LSU make it back? Can LSU keep pushing? Can they keep fighting? Can they repeat what they did last year, make it to the title game and have that playoff hope, have that destiny be controlled by them? Have the fate of a national championship sitting in the hands of the Tigers. That's what they want in the end. And I think, you get a win here on Saturday and you show up, you develop some consistency and you get that confidence and, you carry this over into a road game at Ole Miss, into the home games of Auburn and even a road game at Bama. If you get these games done and you perform like we think you can perform, I don't think that there's really any team in the West that's going to stop LSU. Honestly, I don't know if there's any team in the SEC that's going to stop LSU because this Georgia team that we're going to potentially be facing is not the Georgia team that went on back-to-back national championship runs. And it's hard to keep these guys together. When you got guys winning chips after chip after chip, they're going to want to go to the league. They're going to want to get paid. They got the ice already. They got the ice on their fingers. They got everything. They want to move on. Who doesn't want to go and realize their potential and have their dream job for the rest of their lives? It's hard to pass that down, but with that being said, the college still has to put things together. They still have to go and recruit. They still have to hit hard in the transfer portal. And they're going to have to turn over another successful year with all the eyes on them. So there's the pressure. There's the scheme kind of getting understood because they've been in the limelight for so long. And then it's not often in college football that you see teams go on three-peats or not even go on three-peats. We haven't seen it since the early, 50s, 60s, but to even be in contention for this, there's really only been a couple programs. Alabama for sure, maybe, and Ohio State would consider way back in the gap going for a three-peat. But nowadays, you're just not going to see anybody really make that push. I don't think that you can keep a college football program that on fire, that stacked, that committed, that determined. It's a lot of young kids, a lot of recruiting classes, a lot of things have to gel, a lot of things have to go perfect. And I just think this year is probably going to be one of the better years that LSU has seen in terms of being able to compete at the top of the SEC. Key takeaways, though, for LSU and what I have seen from them through the first 3 weeks. I think that the defense has been able to put on the pressure. Let's look at the Will Rogers game, 11 for 28, 103 yards. Will Rogers is a pretty good example when comparing your defense and, their effectiveness and how they're able to stop a pass game because he is the SEC all-time passing yard leader. He's that quarterback that has all the experience. He's the measuring stick for a long, veteran, tenured college guy sitting there. Like it's Stetson Bennett, sitting in the pocket, just being able to calculate and break down the coverage and just get what he wants done at the end of the day. I think us being able to put a stop to that and to really flex some muscle, and not necessarily a primetime spot, but in a big game where a lot of heads were turned. I mean, you got a lot of big moments that fans are going to take away from it. Even the Caleb Jackson run, shout out to him. That's a grown man run. I mean, he looks like Leonard Fournette out there. I'm going to make a bold prediction here, and I'm going to say that Caleb Jackson, and you can even throw Mason Taylor in there. These two guys, young guys, we've seen them implemented very early into their LSU careers. Mason Taylor last year making a hell of a catch against Alabama to get us the win and, launch us into that SEC title conversation. And Caleb Jackson here bulldozing somebody, turning somebody into a highlight reel, probably for the rest of their career. These two guys are posed for success. I think that they're going to be able to be the next big names, the next potential number 7s, your number 18s, your torch carriers. These are the legends that you're watching be developed here at LSU, and watching these younger guys, especially Caleb Jackson, being the true freshman that he is, succeed at this level is exciting because it makes you feel, one, that Brian Kelly's system is doing pretty well and that he's getting a lot of talent in at LSU and developing them. However, I think that, being able to see explosive superstar players like a Harold Perkins, Mason Taylor, or Caleb Jackson, it just makes you wonder what is going to be able to happen when that lightning does strike for LSU and when they do hit the hammer or the nail with the hammer right exactly where they need. I think Brian Kelly and LSU are a couple pieces away. I don't think it's going to be much longer. It could be maybe next year, could potentially be this year, but we're not talking 3-4 years out like maybe some other schools are, maybe an Auburn or an Ole Miss. These teams are years away from a potential national championship. Shout out Joey Coco in the chat. God bless Caleb Jackson. That's what I'm saying. Caleb Jackson is a very unique talent, and I'm excited to see him. This is one of my big underrated LSU Tigers is going to be Caleb Jackson. I think he needs a lot more attention, and you know what? He's going to earn that, especially with that 6'2", 225 frame. He's going to be knocking a lot of people down for a long time, so I would get used to that. Let's go ahead and take a little trip to the SEC. We're talking about SEC championships. We're talking about LSU running through everyone, running through Georgia, this, that, the other. Let's go ahead and see what the competition is like. Let's go ahead and peep in on what is going on here in the SEC. Alabama with the close game against South Florida. Now, there's a couple of takeaways that you can have from this. At halftime, it's 3-3. People are kind of confused. What's Nick Saban doing? Is he getting too old for this? Yada, yada, yada. You hear all kind of noise, right? Here's what's going on, I think. So you bench Jalen Milroe for that week, and you put your other two backup quarterbacks in, and you're kind of just feeling it out here. You're going through the motions, and you're almost not necessarily entering a 3-quarterback competition again, but you're kind of trying to light a fire under Jalen Milroe. You're kind of trying to let him know, hey, we're serious. We're not going to lock in on you because you have the most experience or you have the most upside, this, that, the other. We're still looking for someone that can play winning football. And if you're not it, we're going to move away from you instantly. That 2-interception game against Texas, a little rough. How are we going to be able to bounce back from this? And I think what Nick Saban decided to do was put two guys out there that threatened him in a sense where, hey, these guys could take my job. I can never be back out in the field again. I know Nick Saban doesn't pull any punches. He pulled Jalen Hurts in a national championship game to start Tua. So I think that wake-up call for Jalen Milroe was what was needed in a sense where he's going to be the guy now. He's the starter. He'll move into the home game against Ole Miss, and they'll try to see, where they can pick the pieces up and if they're going to be able to succeed this year. I think this week is going to have a big implications for Alabama. This big game, Lane Kiffin is always hungry for a win against Nick Saban. He's sitting there criticizing the defensive play call and wondering if the cornerback coach is calling the plays or if it's a defensive coordinator, this, that, the other. You already see the banter during the Alabama and Ole Miss game week. So this type of game, this is major implications for the Crimson Tide. If Jalen Milroe can go out, flex some muscle, people might be able to change their tune about Nick Saban and Alabama. They might be able to think, okay, they could be legitimate. They could be back at the top of college football. But if Jackson Dart and Lane Kiffin confuse them and, go out and put on a show and potentially beat Alabama, yeah, I think that the SEC West is pretty much LSU's to lose. Because if Ole Miss gets the win and LSU gets to win in Alabama, it's pretty much going to come down to whatever happened in their matchup. So LSU controls their fate in their hands. Speaking about the different side of the SEC, we're going to talk about the SEC East. Tennessee losing to Florida. Now, this may shock a lot of people. May not shock many. I mean, it's really just about how you feel about Tennessee. The Joe Milton hype train was running rampant all summer long. You've seen him at the Manning Passing Academy throwing rockets, absolute heaters, piss missiles, if you will, completely down the field, almost 90 yards through the other end zone. No one's going to be able to catch it. It's crazy. So, people are just overreacting in a sense where, man, Joe Milton's going to be able to be a dog. He could be a potential Heisman candidate. Blah, blah, blah. Now we get to see him try to turn some accuracy on instead of his arm strength and the rocket and this, that, the other. We try to see if he can land it in the spots he needs to land it, and that was kind of what was the issue. They started out slow. I didn't think it was a competitive game at all. I don't think Tennessee ever really had a shot once we got out of the first quarter. Other than that, I think that Billy Napier saves his job. I think that if Florida continued to go down and have another year like last year where they're floating around 500, everyone in Gainesville is confused on why that hire was made. Everyone is confused on the direction that the program's going in. I mean, how can you watch Brian Kelly and LSU take the SEC by storm in year one? And how can you watch, Deion Sanders at Colorado develop a program from 1-11 to an undefeated start to the year? When you see things like this around college football and the transfer portal era, you kind of get impatient as a fan. You kind of get greedy in a sense where, like, man, we want to win. I'm tired of watching everybody else build teams and pay money and build these dream squads. I want to be able to get in on the action. So Billy Napier, congrats to him getting that dub at home against Tennessee. He might be able to, get off of that hot seat for a little bit, find some relief. And all in all, our opponents, Arkansas, lost to BYU. So I think that they're nice and softened up. They're almost, they're almost perfectly ripe here for LSU to pluck them right off the tree. Pretty close game between LSU and Arkansas for the past couple of years. It's been decided by, a field goal last year, a field goal in overtime the year prior, where unfortunately we lost, and, a single possession game the year before. I think that this is going to be the battle of the boot that people expect it to be, in a sense where LSU is kind of going to get tested early. I don't think that in the end it's going to be a nail-biter and, LSU isn't necessarily going to run away with it like they did against Mississippi State because of that defense that they're going to face. But I think that this is a win. You're going to look at what Vegas opened it up at. Vegas has a spread at 17.5 for LSU. That's big. LSU negative 950 on the money line, and they got the total at 55. Now, look, if Vegas is saying LSU is negative 950, that sounds like a lock. Spread at 17.5, that kind of has me feeling a little interested because I definitely for sure would not take it. And I know that, they're playing it safe. Look what they just did to Grambling. Look what they just did to Mississippi State. Jade Daniels is on fire. Malik Neighbors on fire. But that defensive line that Arkansas has, that defensive coordinator that they just added, they're changing things up. This is not the same defense that LSU faced last year. Arkansas went into kind of a change. They developed a different scheme on that defensive side where that line is going to be able to push through that offensive line that LSU has. I think that our offensive line troubles are kind of going to come through Saturday. And no, Jaden Daniels isn't going to be on the ground all game. And no, we're not going to be able to not do anything. But the passing game will be slightly affected. Whenever things like this happen, whenever the running game or whenever defensive pressure is busting through over and over and over, the passing game changes in a sense where the play action pass kind of, gets thrown out the window here. You don't necessarily want to try to disguise things as much with an RPO or what have you. You only got a finite amount of time to be able to make decisions here when that pressure's coming through. So that does take away the longer pass. And, Jaden Daniels, I feel like, is going to be one of those quarterbacks that can be fine with that. He can be able to chip away and accurately just pluck checkdowns, get short yard gains. That's what we saw him do at the beginning on Saturday. I think if he takes the confident approach, if he takes the surefire shots that that he has available to him because of Mike Denbrock and the scheme, then they'll be able to work some things out. And I think the best line of attack for this offense is to use those running backs to drain Arkansas's defensive line. We got a lot of running backs. We got a lot of guys that we could put out there. Put out Logan Diggs, Josh Williams, Noah Cain, John Emery, Caleb Jackson. We got a handful of backs that can go out and just completely torture and just terrorize his defensive line, make these guys wish that they never even came play football in the SEC. I think if Jaden Daniels can run around, gas him out, and that offensive line can hold up, LSU's going to get the win. I wouldn't take 17.5. I'll tell you that much. I'll take 7.5 for LSU. That's probably the furthest I'd go, locking the LSU win by a touchdown. The only reason why is just because, they're going to have a little bit of a test on defense in a sense where it's a mobile quarterback. It's a dual threat offense. And we saw a lot of that against Florida State with Jordan Travis. And I'm not going to say I didn't like what I saw. However, I mean, we don't want to see a guy like Keon Coleman get a handful of touchdowns on repeat over and over and over because someone's kicking it out and extending plays with their legs and the coverage is completely busted by the end of the 4 or 5 seconds that KJ has to throw. That's what you don't want to see. You don't want to see, the DBs get busted, or you don't want to see, little bitty mistakes like penalties or different things that could keep us in the game but eventually cost us in the end. The hidden scores, the shaving points and all this. We need to make sure that LSU is getting that defense off the field quick, because you don't want those guys up front to get gassed. That's really what's holding this together. The Mason Smiths, the Mekhi Wingos, the Harold Perkins, that pressure that we're going to bring, that we brought Saturday against Will Rogers, they're not going to be able to just stay on the field for 10-play drives over and over and over. We're going to have to get a stop. We're going to have to lock in, get the offense out there, and chew that clock with the run game. Let the defense breathe. Let them get some rest. Let them drink a little bit of water. Let them come right back out and dominate again. I don't want to see, Jaden Daniels going 3 and out. We have to punt the football, and then a big play happens for Arkansas's offense because of what we've seen. I think if you even look at our defense at LSU is different than what it is last year. Why? Because roles change. You got a lot of different people playing a lot of different positions, and with that comes, learning through tough times and being able to sharpen the edges, as Coach Kelly would say. When you're put in a new role, you're not going to be able to just hit the ground running. Even if you're an excellent football player, even if you have excellent football IQ, you're still learning new things. So through the first couple of weeks, there'll be the growing pains. There will be the accidents, the question marks, the what is this? What am I seeing? We're going to see those things. So I think them becoming more consistent and them focusing on the little things in practice that they know they have to fix, that they are fixing, that's going to be what's the key for LSU here. I think, even Coach Kelly was asked today about, his comment after the Florida State game saying that we're not the team he thought we were at LSU. He said that he made some assumptions that were not accurate, and he was saying that that's a fault of his. So LSU has showed him enough, not only on the game, not only through the Mississippi State performance, Grambling performance, but in practice, in the day-to-days, in the workouts, in the meetings, in the the monotonous life of being a D1 athlete. Coach Kelly has seen the grit that he thought the team needed, that they lacked in week 1. He's seen, the confidence. And he's overall changed his tune, he says. He thinks that this team could be that national championship pusher, that SEC title chaser. And I agree. I think that LSU is doing the things that they needed to do to change. After the Florida State game last year, we would have never expected to be where we were in the end in Atlanta, competing for a potential SEC title game. And I think that we can have a very similar result this year. It would take a lot of dedication, a lot of great performances, and a lot of consistency. But if LSU does the right things and gets the Ole Miss win, gets the Alabama win, they can show up in Atlanta and shock the world and punch their ticket to the college football playoff. The stars are going to have to align. But, if I'm looking for constellations in Baton Rouge, I wouldn't want anyone else than Brian Kelly helping me find them. I think that this is a genius coach. He's the winningest coach right here active in college football. I think he's putting together a pretty good scheme, and all in all, I think that the only thing that LSU really, really, really needs is just that consistency in the cornerback room, maybe some changes in, the way the offensive line is approaching things. I'm not saying change the personnel, but just get a little bit more protection in there for Jaden Daniels, get him a little more time, and let's see some more Malik Neighbors down the field for 50 yards like we saw Saturday, and things are going to be a lot different. Arkansas game, though, we're going to be missing a couple guys. Brian Kelly gave us an update on the injury status of a couple of players. Mason Taylor is going to be listed as probable. Ovia Gofu as well, probable. However, something that's a little confusing, a little worrisome, Omar Spates
linebacker was downgraded to doubtful. So he was on the probable train as well, potentially going to return here this weekend against Arkansas, but now he's labeled as doubtful. Coach Kelly didn't really specify why. We're going to assume that, the injury's kind of taken a little bit longer to recover from. Last time Coach gave us updates on Mason Taylor and Omar Speights, he said that Mason was progressing at a much higher rate and that Omar wasn't necessarily seeing those same changes in his day-to-day and, in his progress. So I'm thinking that things are lagging around. However, with Omar Speights out, I think that they're going to be able to figure out some things. Why? Because, here's the difference with Harold Perkins in the scheme now than Harold Perkins in the scheme against Florida State. So with Harold Perkins in the scheme now, he's playing the same linebacker, and you're not going to be playing nickel. However, when Harold Perkins is inside, according to Brian Kelly, you're going to be pretty much forced to play nickel the entire game just based off of the placement and how many linebackers that you're going to have out on the field. However, when you move away and you go into the 3 wide or 4 wide where they're having 3 linebackers like they are now, the only real difference is just going to have to be the adjustments. You're going to have Matt House be your eye in the sky and, get through to the guys, your captains, your Mekhi Wingos, or, even your Harold Perkins, and allow them to communicate. You got to be able to change things, not necessarily just at the second half. A lot of people are, thinking that's when the adjustments are going to be made. No, a lot of adjustments are made in the second half. Sure, don't get me wrong. However, after the first drive, if you see something, like a mind like Matt House, a former NFL, Super Bowl champion coach, you're going to want to point things out very quickly, especially when you got NFL talent. Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo, all these beautiful, skillful players that we have. You're going to want to get them hemmed in on these adjustments pretty early because that's what's going to keep that defense afloat and alive. I think that pretty much as well as we did against Florida State in a sense of trying to start fast and, I'm not going to say that we did what we needed to do in the first quarter. All I'm going to say is that let's take a look at the offensive drive, open up the game. With Jaden Daniels pushing the ball down the field, that confidence that they had that, okay, we're in the moment. They need to take that, they need to harness that, and they need to move forward with it in a sense where you're not going to have every game go exactly how you scheme it. You're not going to be able to just run through, your script and go through your first 10 plays and have everything be peachy clean and there's a wide open receiver here, boom, dot, touchdown, get off the field, 7 points on the board. Sometimes you're going to come out and there's going to be some things that you haven't seen before. Sometimes you're going to come out and try to run through the line and hurdle and get slammed on your back, and now things are kind of foggy and now you got to figure some things out. You never know what's going to happen. So I think that if LSU goes into Arkansas game not thinking that they're $1 million, not thinking that, we can do this, we've done this 1,000,000 times, we're fine. No, they need to dig deep and think about what happened against Florida State in a sense where, okay, it's not that they went out and played horrible. I'm not going to beat the drum and say that LSU did horrible against Florida State. It's so embarrassing, yada, yada, yada. Florida State's a great team. Florida State's really talented. Jordan Travis, great quarterback. They had #1 returning production in their team. They're returning the most guys in a sense where they're keeping their team together and they're all bought in and they're all ready to fight. So in week 1, of course, you're going to see that. You're going to see that fight, that grit that Coach Norvell has put into this team. Where we're going to have to judge LSU and their true potential is in these SEC West matchups that we have coming up. I think that the Tigers are putting themselves in a situation to really be able to compete. I don't see really any situations where LSU just completely loses out on an SEC appearance besides an Ole Miss loss or an Alabama loss. Because if you lose to Arkansas this weekend and you beat Ole Miss, you beat Alabama, you beat A&M, you win out, you could still somehow statistically get into the SEC title game with, different type of standings and different type of tie-breaking measures because I don't think Arkansas is going to be that squad that meets you at the top. However, when it comes time to these games, when the lights shine bright, that's when the Tigers are going to have to be gelled. Right now is your time where you can go out, you can not necessarily try new things, but you can iron out the kinks. You can go out and pretty much just develop that consistency that you need. LSU doesn't have to be national championship LSU week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. It's ideal, but a lot of championship teams grow and develop over time, over the year. So just because we didn't see what we wanted to see right away, I wouldn't sound the alarms. I wouldn't panic. I wouldn't say, oh, LSU's horrible, this, that, the other. Even if we lose against Alabama, it's not indicative of what the end of the year is going to look like, in a sense where we lose against Alabama. Oh, we're nothing. We're not in the SEC title game. We can't do nothing. Well, I mean, even a bowl game win or just seeing LSU push towards the end of that year could still help out, in a sense where you get a lot of NFL talent, Jaden Daniels, potential guys, John Emery, Malik Neighbors, a lot of guys entering their NFL year. There's always a bright side to pull away from it. I'm not one to just sit here and watch LSU lose and just beat the dead horse over and over that this needs to change, this needs to change, this needs to change. I mean, when you're Coach Kelly, when you got this type of pressure, when you got this type of schedule, things are going to happen. You're not going to be able to just be undefeated and win a national championship like we did in 2019. These moments like Florida State, I cherish them because this team got put in a position and a situation that they were not expecting to be put in. And that's the moments where you learn the most, especially as a football player, especially as a football team. I mean, Coach Kelly will probably be one of the first to tell you don't really learn from the successes, from the wins. Yeah, you got good memories. And yeah, you can kind of help that and have that build confidence. But when you get your butt kicked like that against Florida State on national television and you have everybody see what happens, it's a wake-up call. And it turns on a different mode for you. So I think that LSU here, win against Arkansas, continue to play out, strong the rest of the year, and just tune that noise out. Don't worry about losing, seeing the reaction, and just feeling like, y'all are helpless, y'all are sinking, this, that, the other. That's not the reality of the situation. Not every team is going to be able to just every week play lights out. I mean, look at a team like Colorado last week. They got the win. They're excited. They take it deep into about 1:30 in the morning in extra time, and they're still storming the field, and they're still excited, and Shadur's still holding his wrist up. So, if you got teams like that can be able to take positives and just take something from a moment, I think LSU should do the same thing here. LSU fans I see all too often not be too thrilled with the direction of the team or just the way things are going. And every now and then it's fine to just sit back and relax and just say, man, let's just take in the moment. Let's just watch some LSU football, watch what Coach Kelly has going on. It's only year 2. They're building something great down here. I think that it would do you a favor to not be too critical early on, especially in this process. I think that the SEC title trip last year, it got a lot of people's hopes up. It got a lot of people thinking, oh, we're ready, locked in, national championship right now. It's national championship or bust next season. And then in the end, really, I think LSU pushing for another 10-win season is honestly one of the best. Like that's not necessarily their ceiling, and that's not necessarily what everyone wants them to see. And of course, we won a national championship, but look at it this way. 10-win season, it's going to be another heavy recruiting effort. You're already retaining a lot of Louisiana talent. Push that into the transfer portal. Let's figure out some things. Take this scheme and, this culture that you developed through 2 years, push a lot of them back into year 3. You got guys like Garrett Nussmeier potentially playing next year. This is something. This could be your building year and your launching year. And I think that's what a lot of people in the building are thinking. That's kind of the pulse, I feel like, is that this year, whatever happens, everything is something that you want to build off of. That's what I'm going to leave the stream off with tonight. The goal is to stream every Thursday. So we might change it just based off of scheduling, but as of right now, every Thursday, we're going to break down the LSU game for that week. We're going to talk some college football, so y'all make sure to mark your schedules, hit the notification bell, hit that subscribe button, share the stream. Be on the lookout. We got some on-field coverage coming. We're going to be right there on the field for the Arkansas game, getting the content, getting the highlights. We'll even do a little bit of analysis on Tiger Stadium's field. So we'll try to bring some new things in. We'll try to develop it a little bit. But thanks for tuning in. Y'all make sure to, like I said, subscribe. Be here next Thursday where we do it all over again. This has been the Verdin Verdict. Thanks for watching.